For the last few months, at the first of the month, I've been answering questions that I get regularly from you about the writing process. And this month, it's all about ideas. Coming up with them using existing IP, stories based on real life, and the two biggies, what should I write and what shouldn't I write? Number one, what is IP and why does it matter? IP stands for intellectual property, and it's used as shorthand to refer to any property that someone already owns, either wholly or partially. Usually, it encompasses both the worlds and the characters within that world. So for example, Star Wars is an existing IP. Disney owns it because Lucasfilm sold it to them a few years ago. The characters, the universe, and even the whole notion of the Force is owned by Disney. It is part of the IP. And Disney owns all the IP for Star Wars. Books, music, TV shows, movies, merchandise, everything. It's their IP. Universal owns Harry Potter. Netflix owns The Witcher. HBO owns Game of Thrones. Paramount owns Star Trek. But it's slightly more confusing and frankly not as black and white as I've just made it, because this is a primer course, not the advanced lesson. So let's say you write a graphic novel. It's something you completely created and it's not based on anything else, a truly unique idea. And you own it. You can sell the graphic novel rights to a publisher and they will publish the graphic novel, but they will now own the IP for the graphic novel rights for your graphic novel. But let's say your graphic novel becomes a bestseller and Hollywood comes calling, and they will want to buy as much of the remaining rights, the remaining IP, as you are willing to sell them. Film rights, broadcast rights, merchandising rights, which are all rolled in, plus some rights are sold by region, like North American rights, for example. And here's why this matters. A lot of writers I meet think one of two things when it comes to developing an idea for original screenplay or TV show. Either that they have to come up with the newest and best idea ever, or that they have a great idea for a story set in something like the Star Wars universe. Now, knowing what little you know about IP at this point, even in our super basic primer discourse on IP, why are both of those two things very, very bad? I'll circle back to the first one in a second, because the second one is a little easier to grasp, and it's the fact that you don't own the underlying rights to the story that you're writing if you're writing based on someone else's IP. That means that you won't be able to sell it to anyone, not ever. Disney won't look at it for fear that you're going to sue them if they produce some storyline that is similar to yours. And no one else owns the rights, so they can't buy it anyway. So if you're writing a script based on existing IP, you are done before you even start. But the first thing, the whole you've got the newest and bestest and most uniquest idea ever thing, okay, for review, when does Hollywood come knocking? Yeah, after your graphic novel has already done well. It's already built in an audience. Hollywood is in many ways risk averse. It's a business. If they're going to spend a lot of money on something, they want a return on their investment. They want to know there is a built-in audience, and if there is existing IP that the movie or TV show is based on, the IP does half of their marketing job for them. Now, this doesn't mean that Hollywood won't invest in new stories or new writers. They do it all the time, but they are investing in existing ideas that behave like IP, but that aren't IP. For example, zombies aren't protected by any IP. Walking Dead zombies are, but not zombies in general. Or vampires, or elves, or witches, or werewolves, or superheroes, if we're speaking broadly. Now, Superman, that's IP. Muscly Man, there's no IP, but it feels kind of like IP, so it's less risky. Understanding how IP works and why it's tantalizing to Hollywood helps you know what to write, and more specifically, what not to write. But what about copyright? I mean, don't things fall into the public domain after a bunch of years? And that gets us to the next question. Can I write a script based on a book? The short answer is it depends on when the book was published and whether the author of that book is still alive or not. And if they are not alive, how long ago did they die? Now, the specifics of what is and isn't in the public domain do seem to change every few years. And as I record this, a safe number is the book or article or whatever you're basing your story off of must be over 150 years old. Now, the actual number is closer to 100 or 120, depending on some circumstances, but if you just want to be safe, you just want to play it safe, you don't want to guess, 150 years old or more, you should be good. So that obscure novel that you really, really love, that you know would make a great movie, but that was published in the 1950s? Nope, not public domain yet. The set of journals you found from a Union soldier during the Civil War, well, that was about 150 years ago, so you should be fine. Of course, I have to say this, I am not a lawyer, and if you're not sure, consult a lawyer. But why does it matter if it's in the public domain or not? Well, if it's in the public domain, you don't have to buy any rights. Just go tell the story. If it is not in the public domain, someone, somewhere owns the IP. And you can't do anything about it unless you can obtain the IP. And depending on what you're going after, you might be able to acquire the rights. So that 1950s novel that you really love, well, unfortunately, the original author is dead, but his oldest daughter controls his estate, and his estate owns the IP for film and broadcast rights. You contact her, tell her how much you love the novel and would love the chance to write a film based on it, and you're wondering if the filming rights are available. And if she likes you and if they're available, you get a contract drawn up and you obtain the rights. And now when you go knocking on Hollywood's door, you don't just have an original screenplay. You have a screenplay based on existing IP. And Hollywood starts to salivate. So yes, you can write a screenplay based on an existing book or article or anything for that matter, as long as the IP is in the public domain or as long as you acquire the film or broadcast rights for the IP. But what about real people? Can I write a script based on a real person? Well, this one can be a bit tricky too. Again, consult a lawyer if you're not sure, but generally the same rules apply. If they died more than 150 years ago, you're probably all good. But if you want to write a movie about Snoop Dogg, nope. You gotta get the life rights. There are some exceptions. Certain types of people and certain types of records that are in the public domain might allow you to acquire the life rights or might allow you to tell the story without having to acquire the life rights. Famous people, politicians, athletes, they get treated a little differently, but I need to be candid for a moment. You're a brand new writer. And I realize that movie that you want to write about your favorite rock star seems like a great idea, but it will get no traction for you. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. If you want to write a story about a current, real person, you need to have sold at least 1 or 2 screenplays. Because otherwise the Keanu Reeves biopic that you're wanting to write, it isn't going anywhere because Keanu Reeves will probably not sell his life rights to an unknown, untested screenwriter. But if you want to write about a historical person, that's great, go do it. But you'll need to avoid stories based on current living people. You've got to already be in the Hollywood door to have a shot at those stories. So what should and shouldn't you write? Well, I'm going to keep this part short and sweet. Don't write a story based on existing IP. Don't write any type of fan fiction. Don't write a story based on a real life person who hasn't been dead for 150 years or more. Don't write an autobiographical story about you. You're not famous. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. Do write a story that connects with a generalized IP element. Do write a story that you care deeply about. Do write a story that will help you learn the craft. And do write a story that, should you catch lightning in a bottle, you could actually sell it. Screenwriting is hard to learn, so don't put so much pressure on yourself and think you're gonna sell that first or second screenplay that you finish. I mean, you might, but it so rarely happens that you've probably heard about every instance of it happening. Learn the craft. Write a story you care about, yes, and write one that you could do something with. But that fan fiction story, yeah, sorry, it will never see the light of day, even if it's good. You know, figuring out the things to not write is actually one of the trickiest hurdles for new writers. And if you're not sure if that great idea that you just had is one that you should start working on right now, you should check this out. Don't forget about all the fun buttons below, and there are some links there if you'd like my help in your screenwriting endeavors. And last, when you tell a story that matters. See you later.